Welcome to the Stay-at-Home Nurse Podcast. I'm your host, Deanna Cooper Gillingham. For over 25 years, I've strived to use my nurse credentials to find work that fit my lifestyle, whether it was raising my 4 children and 3 fur babies, traveling the world, or moving to Mexico and living on the Caribbean Sea. Sometimes I succeeded, and sometimes I failed, but I always learned from the experience. Now, I want to help you by sharing what worked and what didn't work. There are so many opportunities out there for nurses today. The Stay-at-Home Nurse Podcast will inspire and equip you to have a nursing career that is meaningful and supports your lifestyle. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Stay-at-Home Nurse Podcast. I'm glad you can join me again this week. This week I'm going to talk about some observations that I've made during this COVID-19 pandemic. Some of them are good and some of them are bad. The first thing that I've noticed is that things are intensified in a time of crisis. Good companies who always have a good company culture and care about their employees will continue to do so. And companies that treat their employees like units will continue to do so. We've all seen examples of bad companies on social media, the ones that are not providing PPE or telling nurses that they cannot wear their own PPE, that they are bringing on their own. So I really don't want to rehash those issues. I would like to focus on some of the good companies. One of the good companies was featured in our Case Managers Community Facebook page. An employee of that company woke up in the morning to find a sign in her yard. These are kind of like those political signs that say, vote for whoever. And the sign said, "A hero lives here." This hospital had decided that instead of laying off their nurses and healthcare workers that worked in their outpatient clinics and outpatient surgery center, that they would find them another job to do. And that job was to go out in the middle of the night and early morning and late afternoon hours and put up these signs in the yards of people that were working in the front lines. I love this for so many reasons. It's a win-win-win. It's a win for the employee who could have been laid off, but instead got to go out into the night and put these signs up in the yards and surprise their coworkers. It was a win for the coworker who woke up in the morning to find this yard and know that she was appreciated by her company or her hospital. And it was a win for the hospital system. You can bet that all of these nurses and doctors and surgery techs and everybody else who had one of these in their yard was sharing it on social media. The person who posted this said she loved working for her hospital system, and this was just one of the many reasons why. We talked in episode 10 about ways to create value-added roles for yourself, and this company or this unit created a value-added role for the entire department. So a takeaway I would like you to consider about this: there are good companies out there to work for. Is your company one of them? If not, what are you doing to change that? If you're not working for a good company in the good times, you surely won't be working for a good company in the bad times. And this example shows that there are good companies to work for. The next observation that I noticed is that it is good to be prepared. We never saw this coming. A lot of nurses are very secure in where they're working. They're working maybe in an outpatient clinic. They love that they're working Monday through Friday. They have weekends and holidays off, and they're very comfortable in their position. They love where they're working, and they never thought that they would even dream of leaving that position. And now, many of them are out of work because the outpatient clinics have closed. While many of them will be going back to work, some may not. This is why it is so important to keep your resume and your LinkedIn up to date. And when I say up to date, your resume or your CV doesn't necessarily need to be ready to go out the door at a moment's notice. But it is important that you have a list of all of the things that you would add to your resume or your CV for a particular job. I particularly don't think you need to have the entire resume ready to go out. I think it's more important to have lists. One of those would be a list of your continuing education credit. And not just a title, but what you actually learned from that continuing education. This way, if you need a certain skill, you can demonstrate that you have attended X amount of continuing education hours to develop that skill. And you would not include every single continuing education thing that you went to, but you would only include the ones that are relevant to the position that you're applying for. You also want to keep a list of any awards that you've gotten at your current employer or in the community. You'll want a date that the award was received and why you received it. You'll also want a list of any projects that you've worked on. These can include anything like quality projects, policies and procedures that were developed, or anything that you did. In addition, you want to keep a list of any roles that you've had, such as charge nurse, preceptor, super user for a computer system. If you've been with one organization for a long time, say 20 years, it will be very difficult to remember all of the roles and responsibilities that you've had. So keeping a nice list that is at the ready and updated about twice a year will help you if and when you need to apply for a new job to have everything at your fingertips that you can just slide right into your resume or CV. In addition to having your CV or resume at the ready is having your LinkedIn at the ready. Nurses who already have a LinkedIn profile that has all of their current work experience on it, as well as a lot of connections, are so ahead of the game at this time. LinkedIn is about so much more than just a place to hold your resume. It's all about the connections. When there's a job opening at a place that you want to work, you want to have connections there. On LinkedIn, you're able to look through all your connections and see who is a first, second, or third degree connection that actually works at that institution and help you to get a leg up at getting hired. Studies have shown that most nurses get their jobs from people that they know, somebody in their connection. So being on LinkedIn and having a lot of connections helps you to get the job that you want. Now, if you would look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I have not done any acute care for quite a while. But even so, in the last 2 weeks, I have gotten inquiries on whether I wanted a home hospice position, New York City relief effort position that pays really good money, or a work-from-home case management position. Recruiters hang out on LinkedIn, and they can only find you if you are also on LinkedIn. So my key takeaway from this one is you never know what's going to happen, and you never know when you're going to be in the market for a new job. Try to schedule time at least twice a year to update your resume, or at least your list of things that you would want to include in your resume, and your LinkedIn profile. Also, schedule time maybe once a month, if not more, to go onto LinkedIn and look through the suggested connections. Connect with people. You never know when it's going to come in handy. My next takeaway is that relationships matter. In episode number 2, I talk about how nurses get the best nursing jobs, and it's through relationships. I invite you to go back and listen. We'll have a link in the show notes. But basically, nurses who have been cultivating relationships with others have a much better chance of getting the best jobs. Think about it. Right now, if you worked in an outpatient colonoscopy clinic that is now closed, and your boss said, hey, there are 3 positions that are open inside the hospital that you can transfer to. If you have connections and you have relationships, you can ask around and find out which job would be the best fit for you. Also, if there's one that is a standout best and you have connections with somebody on that unit, your chances of getting that position are much higher than if you did not have those connections. And it's not just having the connection that's important, it's having a good connection. Every single time you are on the phone, giving report, answering the phone, transferring a patient, you're making an impression. Make sure it's a positive one. So my key takeaway from this one is relationships matter. Every interaction counts. Make sure that you are building bridges and not burning them. My next takeaway also comes under the category of being prepared, and that is develop the skill sets for the job you want. A couple of weeks ago, I got an email from a company that was looking to hire nurses that could step right into a telephonic work-from-home nurse job. They did not have time to train people. They needed people yesterday. And through their experience, although many nurses think that they could jump right into a work-from-home job, it's not quite as easy as it sounds. They need to have a dedicated workspace. They need to have a great understanding of computer systems. They need to be extremely proficient on using things like Word documents or Excel documents or Google Docs or Google Sheets. They need to be extremely proficient in email and how to attach files. They need to be comfortable talking to clients over the phone. They need to have a microphone and a camera on their computer, and they have to know how to use them. They have to understand HIPAA as it relates to work from home. They need to be comfortable enough with computers and software that they can easily learn the new software system that they will be using. I was able to send her the resume of a couple nurses that had licenses in the state that she needed. Now, I know as nurses, we are used to applying for a job and then getting on-the-job training. If we want to move from med-surg to ICU, often our employer will provide training for us or send us off to training. But what I've observed recently is employers do not have time right now to stop and provide the training. So somebody who already has the experience, or at least the training, has a huge advantage. Now, the nurses that I sent this company didn't necessarily have the training on the particular system that this company was using. But because they were trained on another system, they knew that they could learn and it would be an easy transition. So the big takeaway from this one is we were not expecting this to happen. And because this happened, there are some opportunities out there for people who have the right qualifications. So make sure that you are working towards getting qualified for the position that you want so that you can easily step into that role when and if the opportunity arises. Here's a few quick ways that you can actually do that. There are many free tutorials on the internet on how to use things like Excel, Word, Outlook, Google Docs, and Google Sheets. If you're not familiar with computers, consider taking an online class that will help you to get more comfortable with them. I mentioned before how I had taken an ICU course at my local community college right out of college. While you may not want to go to a community college at this time with our social distancing, there are plenty of online courses that you can take. For example, for people who are interested in getting into utilization management or case management, we offer online courses in both of those. And our utilization management course actually gets you using the software that utilization managers use, MCG software. And after taking our course, you can get certified in MCG. And there are many other courses out there to help you get the skills you need to get the job you want. Okay, we covered a lot this week. Let's go over those takeaways. Takeaway number 1, there are good companies and there are bad companies. Is yours a good company? If so, wonderful. If not, you might want to think about changing. Takeaway number 2, keep yourself marketable. Make sure you're keeping your resume and your LinkedIn up to date. Takeaway number 3, relationships matter. Make sure every interaction that you have is a positive one. And takeaway number 4, you never know when opportunity will knock. Make sure you're prepared. I'd like to add one last takeaway. Even in times like this, there's a lot of good going on in the world. There's a lot that we can't control, but there is a lot that we can. Focus on the good, focus on what you can control, and focus on making this world a better place. There were a lot of takeaways in this episode. Focus on just one at a time and do what you can. If there's someone out there that you think would benefit from hearing this podcast episode, please share it with them and leave us a rating and review. They really help. I read every single one of them, and I really love hearing how this podcast is helping you.